What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So, as a resident of the United States of America, I see a lot of great placements added by Vekoma in the recent years in overseas parks. These are parks that are in Europe and Asia, and they're really starting to appear everywhere. The roller coasters I'm talking about in particular are second generation Vekoma loopers. These are these massive blitz-like style coasters that feature either a lift chain or a launch, and have a layout after the drop focusing on mainly airtime, low to the ground elements, and unique inversions. These second gen coasters have notable examples including Formula at Energylandia, Abyssus at Energylandia, Wrath of Zeus at Vin Wonders, and Lek Coaster at Legendia. For around half a decade, these rides have been getting absolute rave reviews from enthusiasts all across the world. So my question today is, when is it America's turn to get one of these? We have absolutely none of these, and we would love to see these come to the country. So today, I'm going to talk about possible candidates for the first second-gen Vekoma in the United States. This is Cedar Flags, and let's get on to the video. Before I start, I just want to say that there are modern Vekomas in the United States, including Freedom Flyer and Dragon Flyer. But at the same time, these aren't necessarily the most thrilling roller coasters, and so I'm not really counting these in this list. These are just pretty nice family coasters that wouldn't be considered second-gen Vekomas. And so I want to get into the list of some of these second-gen Vekomas that could come to the United States. And when I talk about second-generation Vekomas, I also want to include the Vekoma STC model. Not to be confused with the SLC model, this is a modern inverted coaster, and it's a modern take on the SLC. It includes a lot of negative G moments, and is pretty similar to a Vekoma second-gen. So I'm just going to put this in the same category. And finally, I will be talking about both pros and cons for each of the companies, and I will talk about the overall likeliness at the end. And the likeliness might seem pretty low, but I am combining all of these to come up with a final score of 10 or 100%, so if they seem low, it's just the odds out of 10. So let's get into the list. First, I want to talk about a company I never talk about on this channel. It is Disney Parks. Now, Disney has a few resorts in the United States, including the parks at Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and Disneyland in Anaheim, California. These are some of the most famous theme parks in the world, and get more visitors than any other park in the world. So let's look at some of the positives when it comes to Disney parks. Now, it has a great relationship with Vekoma. Vekoma and Disney have worked together over the past few decades, and as recent as Tron Light Cycle, this company is very intact with Vekoma. So if Disney would like a thrilling attraction, I feel like Vekoma would be one of their first choices to go with, and would continue the great relationship with Disney. Now, Vekomas are cheap, but Disney also has a massive spending budget, so Vekoma would be no problem. But looking at the cons, we have one main con, and it is that Disney does not add a lot of thrilling coasters. Now, they do have rides like Rock and Roller Coaster, California Screamin', and Tower of Terror, but other than that, there aren't a lot of amazing thrill rides at these parks. Disney is a family-oriented park chain, and they like to focus on kids and family attractions instead, so my final likeliness will be a 2 out of 10. Up next, we look at Cedar Fair, one of the most prominent companies in the United States when it comes to theme parks. They own several properties across the United States and Canada, and continue to expand in attractions to this day. Now, let's look at some pros and cons about adding a second-gen Vekoma in one of these Cedar Fair parks. Now, a pro is that it is cheap. Cedar Fair isn't exactly a budget manufacturer. Most of their rides spent are B&Ms, which are pretty expensive attractions, but this would be another add-on on top of it. The second one is that Cedar Fair loves to market. Cedar Fair loves to come up with some world's first out of it. And even though it wouldn't be a world's first, they get out of a Vekoma clone and say it's the first of its kind in the United States. And Cedar Fair loves to do that stuff. But looking at cons, one of the main cons is that they haven't worked with Vekoma in a very long time. Sure, they've added boomerangs in the early days, but ever since then, they really haven't talked about Vekoma. And they have been reviving some old manufacturers like Gerstlauer, but I don't see it being very likely that they would do this. And out of 10, I put the likeliness all the way down at a 1. Up next, we have Six Flags, what many people call the budget manufacturer, even though it is the biggest company in North America when it comes to quantity of amusement parks. Now, looking at Six Flags and the relationship with Vekoma, Six Flags does like to work a lot with new manufacturers, and they have a very close relationship with S&S, which is the parent company of Vekoma. And Vekomas, like I said with Cedar Fair, are extremely cheap and would provide a good thrill, and let me say Six Flags loves cheap attractions. Looking at the Bermuda Blitz model, if Six Flags like to invest in one of those only cost around 15 million American US dollars. Now, this is pretty simple, and it would be a pretty good fit for some of these Six Flags parks that haven't gotten additions in a while. The only real con I could think about with this is that they haven't worked with Vekoma in a while, just like Cedar Fair. So I would do the overall likeliness at a 3 out of 10, more than both Disney and Cedar Fair, just because Six Flags likes to do the cheaper stuff. And finally, the last category I want to talk about is probably the most likely, and it is also the most broad category on this list. We are talking about other. And by other, I don't mean a Universal Park or a Herschend Park. I didn't even include those. No, I am including just family-owned or independently owned parks that are pretty big on the map. These are including Lagoon, Adventureland, Silverwood, Waldameer, Knoebels, Holiday World, etc. These are some pretty major parks, and they draw in a lot of people. Who knows, one of their major next attractions could possibly be one of these models. These second-gen Vekomas are pretty unique, and most of them have actually appeared at smaller parks. Legendia's biggest attraction is easily Let Coaster. Even though other parks like Energylandia have multiple attractions even bigger, Vekoma likes to be cheap, and they like to focus on the smaller parks. And so, if a park were to make a huge investment into Vekoma, and would have a groundbreaking new attraction for the United States, I could easily see a highlight attraction being a Vekoma at one of these small parks. Now, what are some of the parks I can most likely see? Well, I was mentioning some earlier, but I think out of those, one of the most likely ones would be Holiday World because of the sheer size they are, and I do think Knoebels would work pretty good with one of these. Maybe a smaller model in the near future, but I don't know. Knoebels is very family oriented, and I don't know if they'd add another thrill after they added Impulse. Let's look at some overall pros of this category. Now the first one is, of course, it is cheap. I was talking about that with Six Flags and Cedar Fair, but it is real emphasis on some of these smaller parks, which aren't going to pay for a massive B&M or Intamin to fill the gap. And then it also has a small footprint. Most of these rides, other than rides like the Firestorm, have pretty minor footprints that could fit in smaller properties. And it would draw crowds. Imagine a ride like a Vekoma Bermuda Blitz at a small park. This would draw in some massive crowds and would probably put this park on the map. I mean, I would pick Kentucky Kingdom for being the prime park to do this, but they are not independently owned anymore. They are owned by Herschend now, and they are guaranteed making their 9 to 5, renovating this park into the Herschend Park of their dreams. But they are a very landlocked park, and I don't see this being added to that park either. But anyway, that is my video. The final likeliness I want to do for the other category is 4 out of 10, which all of the categories together adds up to a perfect 10. Now, this is the most likely because Vekoma likes to focus on this kind of stuff, and I feel like that is the final result. Now, that is my video. When do I think these Vekomas will come to the United States? I honestly predict the mid-2020s at this point due to the pandemic really delaying a lot of stuff, and just the overall reputation of Vekoma in this country. Now that is my video. What do you guys think about it? Let me know down in the comments below what you think about Vekoma in the United States, and I will see you all later.